What is good, everybody? This is your guy, Manny. This is the Talking Sports with Manny podcast, and we're talking NFL today. Tons of games yesterday. Yeah, we're going to preview tonight's game just a little bit, but we're going to focus on what happened, what went down on Sunday. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and run my intro. We're going to go ahead and get started. Sorry for that blooper. Another blooper. We've done the countdown. Here's the intro. And the greatest thing about running a live show is that you have to be so perfect, right? So we're going to go ahead and get this thing on and popping, man. It was tons of games yesterday, tons of injuries, tons of different implications that went down. And we're also going to dive into these NFL standings. First of all, I want to go ahead and dive into the NFL standings before I talk about anything else, because there's some teams out here that, I can't believe what their record is right now. People talk about the Giants being 3-1 and saying, well, the Giants played some pretty bad teams. It doesn't matter. 3-1 is 3-1. The Giants are out here winning with injury concerns and things of that nature. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're going to go ahead and dive into these current standings in the NFL right now. For those who join in live, or whether you're watching like the replay or whether you're listening to it on audio, please continue to share the podcast, continue to like and subscribe. Appreciate all the love that I'm getting all around, all social media platforms. So the Dolphins, they're 3-1 right now with the Buffalo Bills. They're tied. That division is tough. Dolphins losing Tua, that was tough. So to lose Tua and to still be at the top of the AFC East is impressive. We don't know if this is going to last. This is just the first quarter of the season, 4 games in. You really don't find out who a team is until after week 8. So, you have New England, who's 1-3, but they're going to bounce back. You have the Jets, who are surprisingly 2-2 right now. Then when we transition to the AFC North, you have the Cleveland Browns, the Cincinnati Bengals, and Baltimore. All 3 teams are tied for first place at 2-2 record. We're going to get more into Lamar Jackson and the Ravens later on in the show, but it's just crazy to me that Cleveland, with a backup quarterback in Jacoby Brissett, is somehow 2-2. But then you have an MVP candidate in Lamar Jackson, who's also 2-2. So that's the NFL for you. It's any given Sunday. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. They now have gone with Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is going to be the quarterback moving forward, which is great for fantasy, which is great for NFL, which is just great for football in general, because guys like George Pickens is going to continue to have good games. Guys like Claypool and Deontay Johnson are all going to have elevated play, which is great, right? We go to the AFC South. Jacksonville is tied with Tennessee at 2-2. I would have never thought in my wildest dreams that Jacksonville Jaguars would be 2-2. Not just that, first place. They're first place in the division right now. And they came out pretty good versus the Eagles this past game, but they just fizzled out. But to be 2-2 and to be higher than the Titans, that's a major accomplishment after 4 games. Houston, bottom of the barrel, 0-3-1. And the surprising team that has not done anything well is the Colts. They're supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. Matt Ryan is supposed to be an upgrade over Carson Wentz, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But they're 1-2-1. Is that great? Is that bad? It's right in between. So they can be worse, they can be better, but it is what it is at this point. AFC West, you got the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 3-1. They lost to the Colts last week, and this week, they beat down Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which was amazing to watch. But when I look at the Kansas City Chiefs, with no Tyreek Hill, they're just finding ways to get everybody else involved. And this is even a more dangerous offense because you don't know where the ball is going to go. If you watched the game last night, Patrick Mahomes was throwing all kinds of angles and just doing all kinds of weird things. And, Kansas City Chiefs are tough. And defensively, they've improved a lot. And then that offensive line is playing some good ball right now. The Chargers are always one of those teams that are up and down. They might barely miss the playoffs once again. That's just Chargers territory. The Raiders finally won a game. and then the Broncos. So that this division is going to be tough. 1 or 2 losses might knock you out the playoffs. 1 or 2 wins might get you into the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how that division shakes up. Now we go to the NFC East, which is usually a joke, which is usually a division that's not competitive or not good at all. The Philadelphia Eagles are the only undefeated team in the NFL right now, and they're 4-0. The Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants are both 3-1. It's crazy. The Washington Commanders are at the bottom of the barrel, 1-3. That team is looking awful, especially with Carson Wentz. I mean, they cannot score right now. They can't do anything right. We're going to get into all these games and more in depth, especially if we have a lot of time left. The Minnesota Vikings are 3-1. I predicted that the Minnesota Vikings win this division, and they still might. Green Bay is right there at 3-1 as well. Green Bay is tough defensively this year, and they're playing a different way with Aaron Rodgers. They're getting the running backs involved, and Aaron Rodgers is trying to figure it out with these wide receivers, especially with Davante Adams gone. But Davante Adams is in Vegas, and they're 1-3. Rodgers is still doing his thing, and they're 3-1. So just go figure. Sometimes it's not all about the big names, but it's still early. Still plenty of football to go. The Bears are a surprising team right now who happen to be 2-2. The Lions, they score a lot of points. They also give up a lot of points. They're 1-3 currently, but they're much better than a 1-3 team. And honestly, they should be 2-2. I don't know how. Did they beat the Commanders? Yeah, they beat the Commanders. Yeah, they beat the Commanders. So Tampa Bay is 2-2, and the Falcons are also 2-2. So that's it's a shocker to see the Falcons at 2-2 thus far in this early season. Carolina and the Saints. Carolina, I expect them to be 1-3. The Saints, not so much. They're 1-3. They're dealing with injuries. Alvin Kamara just cannot get right as the season is still early and fresh. We move on to the last division, which is the Los Angeles Rams, who play tonight. The Los Angeles Rams are 2-1. The San Francisco 49ers are 1-2. I'm predicting that the San Francisco 49ers win this game tonight, and then it's going to be a 4-way tie at 2-2 in the NFC West. Shout out to Seattle. Shout out to Geno Smith. You know what I'm saying? With all the turmoil, with all the speculation on how are they going to play? Are they tanking? Are they playing for the first overall pick? Geno said, man, wait a minute. I'm finally getting my opportunity after a million years, and I'm going to maximize my opportunity. So shout out to them. My coworker says that, hey, it might not work. It might not, but for the right now, you got to enjoy it. Geno had a huge game yesterday, and like he says, they wrote him off, but he didn't write back. I love that quote. And Geno, talk your talk. Let's go ahead and get into all these games. Let's go ahead and kick it off with the Commanders versus the Dallas Cowboys. Look, the Commanders, I don't know what to tell you. The Commanders have not looked good all season. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Commanders because they're ultra trash right now. Carson Wentz, 170 yards, touchdown, 2 interceptions. And I saw those 2 interceptions. Those were literally on Carson Wentz. They did a better job at not giving up as many sacks, but he was pressured over and over and over again. He threw the ball 42 times, only completed 25, and he only had 170 yards. So the pass rush was definitely effective. It's not all about getting sacks that makes it effective or not. Looking at the box score, let me see who got the sacks for Dallas. Dante Fowler and Neville. So there was no Michael Parsons getting a sack, but I guarantee you he had tons and tons of pressures. Like ESPN doesn't put the amount of pressures, but I can guarantee you that it was tons and tons of pressure. Washington actually ran the ball well. They had 142 yards rushing, which is great, which is what you're looking for, right? Gibson, 13 carries, 49 yards. Believe it or not, this is possibly the best game for Gibson this season running the ball. Jonathan Williams came in, had a spark, five carries for 48 yards, 9.6 yards per carry. And I expect him to get more carries as the season wears on. If you're talking about pure running backs, Antonio Gibson isn't it. McKissick did better running the ball, 8 carries for 40 yards. So they ran the ball 27 times for 142 yards, 5.3 yards a carry. Scott Turner needs to get creative on how he uses this offense. The only bright spot for the Commanders is that Jahan Dotson had another touchdown. That's now 4 games, 4 total touchdowns. But Jahan Dotson gets hurt. He's possibly going to miss at least 2 weeks. Jonathan Allen had a sack. So he continues to play at a Pro Bowl level once again. But Dallas is loaded, man, offensively, defensively. Cooper Rush did what he could to win the game, and he did nothing wrong to lose the game. Ezekiel Elliott had 19 carries for 49 yards. Ezekiel Elliott is not as good as he used to be. I don't know what's going on with him. CeeDee Lamb, 6 receptions for 97 yards and a touchdown. Noah Brown, 3 receptions for 61 yards. I think Dallas played a complete game offensively and defensively. I think that the Washington Commanders defense played a whole lot better, but that offensive line has major issues. Moving on to the next game, you got the Miami Dolphins versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And that was the game that happened on Thursday night. I was expecting a pretty good game, and it ended up not being a great game because Tua Tagovailoa got hurt. He shouldn't have come back early. He did. Teddy Bridgewater steps in, and he was okay. He wasn't good. He wasn't great, but he was okay. Mostert led the way with 69 yards rushing. But Tyreek Hill, man, he's amazing. He had 10 receptions for 160 yards. Somebody was asking Tyreek Hill, do you think that Teddy Bridgewater can lead this offense? Tyreek Hill told that guy, if they put you in the game, he's going to put up numbers. So what that is saying is Tyreek is like, put the ball in my hands, and I'm going to go out here and I'm going to create yak with my ability to, run after the catch. So, yeah, Tyreek was amazing. 10 receptions, 160 yards. He's up there when it comes to leaders in the league in terms of yards total. T. Higgins had a great game, 7 receptions, 124 yards and a score. Jamar Chase came to life a little bit, 4 receptions, 81 yards. Joe Burrow had one of his better games of the season. The biggest number to me was no interceptions. He had 287 yards passing, 2 scores. He was sacked 1 time, which wasn't bad. Tyler Boyd did complete a pass. Joe Mixon, his usage, 24 carries, 61 yards. That's not where it's at, but he did have a score. On this particular episode, we're going to highlight a lot of running backs that actually did great, especially when I talk about this in further depth when I do the fantasy show later on in the week. Some running backs had some pretty good weeks this week. We go ahead and transition to the Minnesota versus New Orleans game. Kirk Cousins, look, this is in Europe, early in the morning. It's semi-prime time. It's not completely prime time, but it's semi-prime time. Kirk Cousins comes out of here, 273 yards, a touchdown and an interception. So he wasn't great. He was okay. Dalvin Cook, 20 carries, 76 yards. Justin Jefferson, welcome back to the NFL. 10 receptions, 147 yards to lead the way. Adam Thielen had a great game. 8 receptions, 72 yards. Because it was always about who's going to step up outside of Justin Jefferson, or can Justin Jefferson have a good game and also have another receiver have a good game? It's been either Justin Jefferson or the other guy. So this was a mixture of Jefferson and somebody else stepping up and having a big game. Chris Olave stepped up, another big game, 4 receptions, 67 yards and a score. There was no Michael Thomas. Jarvis Landry was non-existent. Alvin Kamara was out. Latavius Murray, 11 carries, 57 yards and a score. And Taysom Hill also had a score as well, which I knew that he possibly would. With no Jameis Winston, no Alvin Kamara, you're going to expect your playmakers, which is Taysom Hill and Olave and the rest of these guys. They had a chance to tie the game. Will Lutz missed the field goal at the end, and the Minnesota Vikings win this game 28-25. So that was pretty good. Now, moving on along, next game, you have the Browns versus the ATL Falcons. The Falcons are 2-2. You already talked about that. Jacoby Brissett continues to play well, but the Browns were not good enough to pull out this win. Nick Chubb had a great game, 19 carries, 118 yards and a score. David Njoku coming to life, 5 receptions, 73 yards. That's 2 good games in a row. But once you get him in and you put him into your fantasy lineup, he lets you down. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 5 receptions, 71 yards. So they moved the ball rather well, but Amari Cooper, you Couldn't find him this game. He's been solid the last 2 games, but this particular game, he didn't do well at all. Cordero Patterson, ATL running back that has been playing so well, one of the top leading guys in yards coming into this game. He gets hurt. Tyler Algier plays great, 10 carries, 84 yards. He could be the guy that gets the bulk of the carries moving forward. Caleb Huntley, he steps in, 10 carries, 56 yards, and a score. When we talk about fantasy, we're going to get more in depth on who is going to lead this backfield, but it seems to be a 50-50 timeshare between Huntley and Algier. This is football for you. Kyle Pitts, 1 reception, 25 yards. When is Kyle Pitts going to get some consistent targets? Kyle Pitts only had 4 targets. He's going to need more than 4 targets. I understand that Drake London is the number 1 target. He was targeted 7 times, caught 2 for 17, but you're going to need Kyle Pitts if you want to win more games and win more effectively. Yes, they won the game, but if they didn't win the game, because it could have gone either way, then you'll be hearing about, oh, you drafted Kyle Pitts number 4 overall, and you're not, yeah, when you're winning, it's okay, but when you're losing, there's going to be plenty finger pointing going around. We go ahead and move into the next game, which is the Baltimore Ravens versus the Buffalo Bills. I thought this was a great game all around. I was expecting more of a shootout, but this game was good. This game was close until Lamar Jackson, until they figured out they needed to go for it on goal line, on 4th and goal, and then they don't convert the touchdown. The game is tied 20-20. Josh Allen drops all the way down. They kick the field goal, and the Bills win the game. Josh Allen was not spectacular. 213 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He also ran 11 times for 70 yards and a score. So, yeah, overall a great game, but in terms of being a quarterback just passing the ball, he didn't play well. Lamar Jackson had his worst game of the season, 144 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. But he was still effective as a runner, 11 carries for 73 yards, no score. So, even when guys like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson don't pass well, they run. These guys are dual threat guys. But the biggest takeaway for the Ravens is that J.K. Dobbins had a great game. He had 13 carries for 41 yards, but he had a rushing touchdown. And then on the receiving side, he caught 4 receptions for 22 yards and a receiving touchdown. So he had 2 touchdowns. This is something that J.K. Dobbins can build upon. Like in this offense, right? They build it to gear towards what Lamar Jackson likes to do. They took away Mark Andrews from this game, but with each and every given Sunday, it kind of reminds me of those Eagles offenses that had Donovan McNabb. You couldn't really pinpoint where the ball is going to. A lot of times it's either Andrews or Bateman, but now you have J.K. Dobbins, a guy who definitely can catch passes, and then Duvernay. So it's a fun offense. It's a pro-style offense that is effective. They want to throw the ball. They want to spread the ball. And then when you spread it, then you have Lamar Jackson running. So it just makes this offense so spectacular. This was another week where the Ravens should have won this game, but due to coaching and bad decisions by Lamar Jackson, they just gift wrapped this win to Buffalo. You gotta take those points and go up 23-20 and just say, hey, defense, don't lose us this game. And it happens. Even with all the talent that the Ravens have on defense, their defense hasn't been good all year. But this was the best defensive effort from the Ravens so far this season. We go to the hottest game on Sunday. If you like offense, you love this game. It was bananas. It was crazy. Seattle, they win this game 48-45. And if you're playing fantasy football and you was going against T.J. Hockenson, you pretty much are crying right now. T.J. Hockenson had 8 receptions, 179 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. He was amazing. Reynolds pitched in. 7 receptions for 81 yards and a score. It's time to start thinking about the Detroit Lions as a power offense. Now, obviously, I want to see Detroit versus some of the top teams in the league defensively before I go ahead and say that. But Seattle's defense isn't too bad. They had a bad performance yesterday, but for the most part, Seattle's defense has been solid. Jared Goff, man, 378 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. This game was not lost because of Jared Goff. And this is Jared Goff doing this thing with no Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's doing this with no DJ Chark. So his 2 top receivers are gone. He's doing this with no DeAndre Swift. That's his top running back. So Jamal Williams steps in, 19 carries, 108 yards, and 2 scores. So Jamal Williams was great. He did his job. I believe everybody did their job, but defensively was where they just couldn't get it done. And it just is what it is. They said that Jeffrey Okudah wasn't on DK Metcalf. He should have been on DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf had 10 targets. He caught 7 of them for 149 yards. Big game for him. Big game for Tyler Lockett. 6 receptions, 91 yards. So big game for Geno Smith. 320 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns, 0 interception. And his completion percentage is one of the highest in the league. Then on top of that, he was able to rush 7 times for 49 yards in the score. So Geno played a great game, and it's amazing to see Geno Smith play so well and Russell Wilson play so mediocre. But shout out to Rashard Penny. 17 carries, 151 yards rushing, and 2 scores. This is the Rashard Penny that we saw last year to close the game. He had gashing runs of 41 yards and 35 yards. He was running all over the field. Detroit Lions defense couldn't do anything to stop him. They couldn't stop anybody. So this was a lot of points, a lot of yards. It was a fun game for those people who love shootouts. So yeah, shout out to both teams for making this entertaining, because some of the games were boring on Sunday. So I appreciate watching Red Zone and watching the Lions and Seattle go at it. Here's a game between the Chargers and Houston. Chargers came out with a big lead. It was like 27-7 at some point, and then Houston goes on, to score 17 more points to make this thing a game. But the Chargers were able to pull it off at the end. Justin Herbert had a great game, 340 yards passing, 2 scores. Austin Eckler had 13 carries, 60 yards, possibly his best rushing effort so far this season. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. But what he does on the receiving side is what makes Austin Eckler far different than any other running back in the league this season. He had 6 receptions for 49 yards and another score receiving the ball. So played great. Gerald Everett has been solid all year, 5 for 61 and a touchdown. Mike Williams led the way for the Chargers with 7 receptions for 120 yards. Nico Collins, first good game of the season, 3 receptions for 82 yards. Brandon Cooks and Rex Burkhead were able to catch touchdowns. But the thing with Houston is they had a chance to draft a quarterback this year, right? But they believe that Davis Mills is that dude, right? So you now have Davis Mills. He's not that guy. So maybe next year they'll definitely go out and look for a quarterback. Davis Mills is talented, but he's more of a backup. When I look at Davis Mills, I think of like a guy like Gardner Minshew, starting level quarterback or even a backup, but just not a franchise quarterback. So that's not it in Mills for me. Houston Texans, they're 0-3-1. So they're going to be in prime position to draft one of the top tier quarterbacks coming out this season. But yeah, man, shout out to Dameon Pierce. 14 carries, 131 yards in a score. I told you guys, running backs had a great week 4. Plenty running backs had over 100 yards rushing. This is possibly the first time this season that there's been so many great performances from the running backs this season. So Dameon Pierce, rookie, 14 carries, 131 yards. The only knock on Dameon Pierce this year is that they're losing a lot. So he's not involved in the pass work. Although he had six targets, 6 receptions for 8 yards. He had 6 receptions for 8 yards. So if you're playing PPR in fantasy, that's great for you. But this is the first time that he was involved a lot in the passing game. If he's getting all the work in the passing game and all the work in the run game, then you feel better about Dameon Pierce. But he did get all the carries. He got all 14 carries. No carry went to Rex Burkhead. So that's encouraging for those who play fantasy football and for those who have Dameon Pierce either on their redraft teams or on their dynasty teams. Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans always figure out a way to lose. They figure out a way to lose. But unfortunately, they were playing the Colts, who are just as bad. So it was 2 teams that really didn't want to win. Somebody has to win, or somebody has to tie. So Tannehill, oh man, look, this is an ugly stat line. 137 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He was sacked 3 times though. Derrick Henry, 22 carries for 114 yards. Derrick Henry seems to be back. He did score a touchdown rushing. The rookie from Maryland, Chig, I'm gonna just call him Chig because I can't pronounce his name. He had a touchdown. Robert Woods gets a touchdown, but Treylon Burks was carted off the field and the injury looked pretty bad. So it looks like the Titans are going to be in the market, maybe looking for a veteran wide receiver. Will Fuller's out there. There's plenty of other vet wide receivers that are out there. I don't think the Titans have enough on the receiving end. Robert Woods is your only guy, and he's a guy that's coming off an injury. So he's been solid this year, but he just hasn't been good. Jonathan Taylor, what's going on? 20 carries for 42 yards. The same Jonathan Taylor that everybody says was on the same level as Derrick Henry. What's good, Hawk? Appreciate you hopping on. Something is off with Jonathan Taylor, and I really don't know exactly what it is. Mo Alley-Cox had a great game, 6 receptions, 85 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Alec Pierce, 4 for 80. The problem was not Matt Ryan in this game. He had 356 yards and 2 scores. I keep telling people the Commanders, I'm not saying that they have a chance at beating the Titans. I'm saying that the Titans defense is pretty bad, regardless on who's on that line, regardless of the Commanders not having a good line. All I'm saying is that you'll have your chances to pick that secondary apart. And that's definitely what could happen when the Commanders play the Titans next week. I'm here in Nashville, so I'm going to go to a sports bar. It's going to be fun. But, yeah, Titans win. They found a way to lose. They didn't lose. They won. Shout out to the Giants, man. How are the Giants 3-1? I don't understand. How are the Bears 2-2? You know, it's just one of those things where you kind of get the schedule to work in your favor, and you get some wins here and there. Khalil Herbert, we were thinking that we were going to get a great game. Like last week, he had 19 carries for 77 yards. Justin Fields is just not it. You know, another Ohio State quarterback that's not playing well. He had 147 yards. He was sacked 6 times. How can you be that mobile and you're sacked 6 times? It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. Darnell Mooney finally had a game. 4 receptions for 94 yards. Before that, I believe he had like under 50 yards total, something crazy like that. Daniel Jones was effective running the ball. He had 6 carries for 68 yards and 2 scores, not 1, but 2 scores. So he's practically the reason why the Giants won that game. Saquon Barkley, 31 carries, 146 yards. Saquon Barkley has been awesome this year, both in real life and both in fantasy. But yeah, the Giants continue to find ways to win. People like to make excuses for their teams losing, like my Commanders. Oh, the Commanders are losing because of this, because of that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Everybody deals with injuries. It's all about what you do. And sometimes the schedule falls in your favor. I'm not saying the Giants are going to keep up this pace. There's going to come a time when the Giants start losing, when they start playing better opponents. But today, they're 3-1, and they're tied for second place in the NFC East. We go ahead and we transition to the next game, and that's the Jags versus the Eagles. The Jags came out 14-0, and all I can think of is, wow, the Jags are for real this year, because they come in 2-1 with a 14-0 lead. You're thinking it's going to be a blowout. You're thinking, wow, after today, the Jags might go up 3-1. But then that doesn't happen. The Eagles come back with 20 points unanswered to take a lead at halftime. 20-14, and then it was just crazy after that. It was crazy after that. You know, the Jags made a little run at the end, but they just couldn't get it done. Trevor Lawrence had a solid game, 174 yards passing, 2 scores, 1 interception. Travis Etienne, I don't know, what is your purpose right now? 8 carries for 32 yards is not cutting it. For a guy that was drafted in the first round with all this pedigree and Clemson and this and that, Travis Etienne has not been good at all. Freezer Burns, what's good, man? Appreciate you hopping on the stream. It says the Giants got 2 guaranteed losses versus my Birds this year. Most likely the Eagles are the hottest team right now with one of the best, if not the best, defense in the NFL. So, I mean, the Eagles are hot. They're 4-0. Everybody was thinking Dallas might be the best team in the NFC East, but I've always said the Eagles. Oh no, sorry. To start the year, I said Dallas. But then once the Eagles made a few pickups, a few free agency moves, I was like, oh man, Bradbury going to the Eagles, that gives them 2 solid corners. You guys have pass rush. And then you guys picked up AJ Brown during the draft. So that was, for me, that was a game changer. Like right after the draft, it was like, oh man, the Eagles are for real. The Eagles could be for real if everything meshes well. AJ Brown, 5 receptions, 95 yards. Dallas Goedert, five receptions, 72 yards. He dropped what would have been a touchdown, I believe. But Devontae Smith, he came in and destroyed the Commanders last week. Miles Sanders, he's running well. 27 carries, 134 yards, 2 scores. I'm telling you guys, running backs had great weeks in week 4. And if Miles Sanders continues this pace, the Eagles, you might be talking Super Bowl. Even though I'm a Commanders fan, I like to keep it real. you might be talking Super Bowl because you have a perfect balance with running the ball, passing the ball. Jalen Hurts has been amazing, and he's an MVP candidate this year. He's up there with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes for MVP voting right now. Those are the four guys that it can go either way based off of team success and who wins more, who loses, whatever. The stats are there for Jalen Hurts is what I'm saying. But Christian Kirk continues to have a decent season. He had 2 receptions for 60 yards. But, yeah, it was a great game. The Jags are a lot better than what people think. Man, this game right here, 2 young quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett. It's Kenny Pickett season. We talked a little bit about it before the show, in the show. But Kenny Pickett has taken over for Trubisky. Kenny Pickett comes in. You see the 3 interceptions. But Kenny Pickett passes the eye test. Kenny Pickett was able to push the ball down the field. You see that Trubisky had 6.5 yards per pass on average. It was 9.2 for Kenny Pickett. That's almost a first down every single time he's getting a completion. So the team is going to enjoy Kenny Pickett. George Pickens is going to be nice. He had 6 receptions for 102 yards. Pat Freiermuth, 7 for 85. Telling you, Deontay Johnson is going to get going. Claypool is going to get going. This is just going to be great for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not saying they win anything. I'm not saying they do amazing. But what I am saying is that this offense is definitely going to go to a whole nother level with Kenny Pickett. Trubisky is such a bad quarterback, and I'm surprised that a lot of my Commanders fans wanted Trubisky. It's Trubisky, man. He's not a good quarterback. Shout out to Breece Hall. He's starting to come into his own 2 weeks in a row, 17 carries, 66 yards, and a score. Zach Wilson led a comeback victory, 252 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. But Corey Davis had a great game, 5 receptions, 74 yards, and a score. So Elijah Moore, I was hoping for Elijah Moore's season with, Wilson coming back, but it might be a slow thing, a progression. Tyler Conklin continues to play well. So Zach Wilson finally has weapons, man. Between Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Tyler Conklin, Garrett Wilson, Michael Carter, Breece Hall, Braxton Berrios. So he has the weapons to be effective and to lead the Jets to more wins. Jets are solid defensively. And then now, you have weapons for Zach Wilson. And that's what you do for your quarterback. When you have a young quarterback, you get him a tight end and you get him weapons. You get them offensive line. Obviously, they lost 2 of their tackles this year, which is tough. But, it just is what it is. You adjust with injury. We go ahead and we move on to the Cardinals versus Carolina. Kyler Murray was okay. He had 207 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. The running game for Arizona hasn't been what people were thinking. Last year, you were thinking, James Conner with the double-digit touchdowns. This year, I'm not seeing that same kind of spark from the run game. Even as a team, they're not running the ball well. Even Kyler Murray had 12 carries for 26 yards, 1 touchdown. So it hasn't all been there for them running the ball-wise, but Kyler Murray's making plays. Shout out to Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown is like 4'5", but he just continues to make plays. 6 receptions, 88 yards, and a score. So shout out to Hollywood Brown. It's been a good pairing between Hollywood and Kyler Murray. I think this team takes a whole new step once DeAndre Hopkins returns. So you never know what's going to happen with Arizona. They were really good last year. This year, they haven't been as great. Defense is solid, nothing fancy. But, Rondale Moore makes his debut. Nothing spectacular. 3 receptions for 11 yards. But Greg Dortch has been great, taking up for Rondale Moore. Zach Ertz continues to be solid. 6 receptions, 47 yards, and a score. Christian McCaffrey, man, for those who play fantasy, we were excited to have 9 receptions and 81 yards receiving and a receiving score for Christian McCaffrey. So he seems to be back. DJ Moore was solid, 6 receptions for 50 yards, but he needs more targets. Yeah, he had 11 targets, but the connection is still not there between DJ Moore and Baker Mayfield. The coach is saying that he's not going to go away from Baker Mayfield. I think they should go away from Baker Mayfield, but with due time. So Carolina falls to 1-3. Moving on to one of my favorite games this weekend, and it was the New England Patriots versus the Green Bay Packers. My guy Romeo Doubs had another good game. 5 receptions for 47 yards and a touchdown. He almost had 2 touchdowns, but they said that he stepped out of bounds. But I thought he was in bounds, but it is what it is. Romeo Doubs continues to make waves. Allen Lazard was just as solid. 6 receptions for 116 yards. Robert Tonyan had a touchdown. So Rodgers is now getting more and more comfortable with his receiving core. Randall Cobb stepped up. So they're playing double running backs, one on each side, one blocks, one runs. Both of them can catch passes. They both split that backfield evenly. Aaron Jones had 16 carries for 110 yards, and A.J. Dillon had 17 carries for 73 yards. A.J. Dillon also caught 1 reception, and Aaron Jones caught 3 receptions for 5 yards. So it's a split backfield. Aaron Rodgers was, as a whole, solid. Still something missing with Aaron Rodgers. He's not the Aaron Rodgers of old, especially once he's throwing picks, especially this early in the season. He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks to ever play the game of football. 251 yards, 2 scores, and an interception. Shout out to Bailey Zappi. Coming out of Western Kentucky, small school, you really didn't even know what to expect out of this kid. But this kid steps up and nearly led them to a victory. Nearly led them to a victory, especially after the head injury after Brian Hoyer. They're down Mac Jones, now Brian Hoyer. Now you have a mid-round rookie quarterback who comes in and they're playing okay. Patriots try to run the ball. They just couldn't get a lot going running the ball. 18 carries for Damien Harris is solid, 86 yards in the score. Ramondre Stevenson, 14 carries and 66 yards. That's solid. But overall, not the performance that Bill Belichick wanted. They did have that pick. He did have that pick 6. Excuse me, guys. But that's what I'm saying. Aaron Rodgers has not been the same. Ooh. Need some water. All right. I'm good now. We go ahead and move on to Denver versus Vegas. When you look at Denver versus Vegas, it's like, what are we really looking at? Coming into the game, the Vegas Raiders were 0-3. Broncos were 1-2. So I really felt that the Vegas Raiders needed to win a game or something crazy would have happened. With all the money that you paid to Derek Carr and you paid to Devontae Adams, it's not working. Chandler Jones is not working. So the biggest reason why the Oakland Raiders were able to win this game is because they gave Josh Jacobs 28 carries. You got to get this man carries. He had 28 carries for 144 yards and 2 scores. I told you guys, running backs had a good game. Russell Wilson possibly might have played his best game so far this season. He had 237 yards passing, 2 scores. He was also able to get 4 carries for 29 yards and a score. The Broncos have lost Javonte Williams for the season. Devastating news for the Broncos. Mike Boone and Melvin Gordon assumed to take, this backfield. But Melvin Gordon has fumbled numerous times this year. So it could be the Mike Boone show moving forward. So I don't know, man. Russ got to do something. They got to gear this offense towards him. Cortland Sutton solid as always. 5 receptions, 52 yards in the score. Devontae Adams did Devontae Adams type things. 13 targets, 9 receptions, 101 yards. It was just that the Vegas Raiders were able to make more plays than the Denver Broncos. They were able to control the clock by running the ball. You give my guy Josh Jacobs a rock, he produces. He's a really good running back. There's all the speculation on, are they going to pay him? Are they not going to pay him? It doesn't matter. Josh Jacobs is Josh Jacobs. You know what I'm saying? He's going to do his thing. So the final game of the night was the Chiefs versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Chiefs came out, 14-3. Then, both teams started scoring more points in that second quarter, and then there was kind of like I don't want to say that it was a back and forth, but it was like Kansas City is destroying you, and then Tom Brady's trying to answer. Brady had a good game, 385 yards passing, 3 scores, no interceptions. He was sacked one time. The Buccaneers were not able to run the ball at all. They ran the ball 6 times for a total of 3 yards. They were averaging 0, negative, half a yard per carry. That's ridiculous. 6 carries for 3 yards is not going to cut it for any team. So the the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't look good, but it's encouraging that the offense the offense looked a little bit better. Mike Evans coming back. Mike Evans is one of the greatest wide receivers that ever played the game. This guy has had 1,000-yard season every single year that he's been in the league. What is it, like 7 straight years? He might do it again this year. He had 8 receptions, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He is one of the greatest red zone touchdown catchers in the history of the league. That's all he does. He gets touchdowns. Chris Godwin came back. He was solid. 7 receptions, 59 yards. He got hurt, but he was able to finish the game. Fournette, 7 receptions, 57 yards. So Tom Brady likes to use these short passes as an extension of the run game. So even though they didn't run the ball well, a lot of Tom Brady teams are not built to run the ball. They're built to have quick little passes, and it worked out. It was effective for them. Travis Kelce had 5 receptions in the first quarter. First time he's ever had 5 receptions in a quarter. He has passed, I believe it was he passed a tight end. I can't think of the name right now, but he passed a tight end to be 5th all-time in tight end yards. He's going to be one of the greatest tight ends when it's all said and done. He passed Rob Gronkowski to be number 5th in yards total for tight ends in NFL history. Shout out to Travis Kelce. 9 receptions, 92 yards in a score. He was solid. Valdez-Scantling was solid. Juju was solid. Mahomes was able to spread the ball. So you don't really know where the ball is going. Jordy Fortson caught a touchdown. You know what I'm saying? Clyde Edwards-Helaire continues to get touchdowns. He had 19 carries for 92 yards. As the game wore on, Clyde Edwards-Helaire got stronger and stronger and stronger and was able to propel the Kansas City Chiefs to a win. But Isaiah Pacheco, I'm not saying he's going to be a star, but what I'm saying is this guy has some fire to him. He has some fire to him. 11 carries for 63 yards. He's solid. They just had a real solid game. And shout out to the defense for the Chiefs. They continue to get better. Yes, they gave us some points, but, Tampa Bay was trying to come back. But all in all, great game. I enjoyed it. I was thinking that it was going to be closer, but Mahomes is on a mission. I can see the Chiefs in that Super Bowl this year. I can see Mahomes winning another MVP. Like I said, some good quarterback play going on so far. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But that's my time. This is the Talking Sports with Manny podcast. Please subscribe if you're listening to it on the audio version. I'm on Apple. I'm on Spotify. If you guys are watching on YouTube, drop a like. Drop a comment. I will get back to you guys. I will catch you guys on that next episode, and I'm out. Peace.